What were we going to say?
Welcome
What?
to WTF story. But then I thought I'll let you say it.
You can say it.
Welcome to What the Fuck Stories and Advice. I'm Daryl Gove.
No, I'm Caroline Cranshaw.
And today we're going to be reading you a story about something and stuff.
Because obviously, Daryl has no fucking idea what we're doing. Well, I thought we'd do another episode of What the Fuck News.
Yes, that's a good idea.
And it always seems to come together, which I find interesting. Or when there's one big story, there's another story that they don't want you to pay that much attention to, which I find very interesting. So I thought what we would start with is a little whistleblower story that has come out on the 5th.
Ooh.
And I don't know why this isn't, I guess it is big news, but it should be bigger than what it is. But there's been other stories in the news that have been distracting from it, like things happening in Ukraine. So, all right, fasten your seatbelts.
Put on your brown underwear.
Put on your brown underwear. Oh, I don't have brown underwear personally, but yeah, I don't tend to shit my pants. So, you know. I could say a lot more, but I'm not going to. I'm a little bit tired, so give me a break. I can feel
You're talking all about that underwear, and all the people that listen to this because they've got a fetish for you and your voice. Well, yeah. Now they have some mental images.
I don't wear underwear, so no, I'm just kidding. I do. How do people never wear underwear? I'm like, what? That is just nasty. Anyways. Did you have a grandmother that whenever you left the house asked you if you had clean underwear on? Because what if you're in an accident and someone would see that you're not wearing clean undies? Was that a thing?
I used to hear people talk about that like in popular culture as I was growing up, but I did have a grandmother who, when she did my washing, she would iron the underwear.
Like cotton underwear or boxers?
Yeah, like cotton boxers. And they're just or whatever they're made of, and they would just be all ironed and nice with all the rest of the clothes. I'm like, oh, that's really thorough and lovely. She's so sweet. Acts of service.
Yes. Mine would always say, do you have clean underwear on? Do you have clean panties on, Caroline? Because if you're in an accident, what if someone saw that you weren't wearing clean panties? And I'm like, well, what if you wet your pants in the accident and then you don't have clean undies? And we would have these ridiculous conversations.
Well, I just think it's weird that there's a presupposition in the question that you may not have clean underwear. And I just don't know that that's a thing. Like, who doesn't wear clean underwear?
Well, apparently some people. You know what the average amount of what a man, like a single man, will wash his sheets? What would you say would be the average frequency?
I think I've heard this before, and I think it's like really long in between washes, like 6 weeks or something.
4 months. 4 months. And some guys were like, yeah. And then I just flip it on inside out and lay on the other side. And they were like, yeah, that's what I do with my undies as well.
Oh.
It's...
You know, Mum told me one time, she said, in Scotland, we used to wear these things called vests under our shirts for school. So it'd be like a singlet, like a tank top, and they would be white and they would go under your shirts to keep you warm because obviously it's freezing there. And so she says, one day I couldn't find any, and I was looking around the house, looking in the wash, and I'm like, where are they? And then I went and I found you, and she says, you had like 6 on because every day you were too cold. So she'd put a new one out, but instead of taking the old one off, I just put another one on and another one on every day. And no one noticed me getting bigger and bigger until I was wearing all of them to go to school.
And you didn't have like a shower or a bath in between that time?
I don't know.
That's what I'm more concerned about, Daryl, with that story.
I think when I was a little kid, I would like dodge hygiene if I could. Yeah. So I remember at least brushing my teeth. I didn't want to do that.
No, kids are terrible. They're basically like wild animals. My partner was always like, what do you mean? Like, just wants to brush their teeth. And I'm like, they're kids. You have to stand over them twice a day and make sure they do it. And you make them have a shower and they will bitch and moan. But until it's drilled into their head, they just don't want to do it.
You literally have to stand over them. Like my dad would say, go up and brush your teeth, and then come down and he'd say, let me smell your breath. But we cottoned on to the trick. So we'd go up, put toothpaste in our mouth, come down the stairs and smell like we'd brush your teeth. It's like, I didn't even consider while you're up there in the bathroom, putting toothpaste in your mouth, go that one extra step and brush them.
I would go and then check if the toothbrush was wet. Kids are dirty, nasty little beings.
Dirty, nasty things. That's why I have dogs.
Not all of them.
Except for yours. If you're listening to this, your kids are not disgusting. They're great.
They're great, but they're still dirty. It's the nature of children. Okay, here we go. So there's been a whistleblower. There was a story published on a tech platform called The Debrief on June 5th. And it tells the story of a guy named David Charles Grouch. I think I'm saying that right. Who is an ex-Air Force officer with a lengthy background in military intelligence. So his claim, the U.S. government is in possession of physical evidence of non-human crafted aircraft and the remains of their otherworldly pilots, and have been leveraging this knowledge for advancements in weaponry. Now, this is not news to me. Is this news to you?
No. Do we think that the non-human pilots were like killer whales? Because I've heard that they've been getting really clever lately.
Yes. That is actually terrifying what's been happening.
Yeah, one of them got hit by a boat or something, so it started capsizing boats. But then it started to train other orca how to capsize boats. So there's been something about like 60 orca attacks on boats off the coast of Portugal.
And there's the whole 100th monkey phenomenon. Do you know this? Where like when like 100 of a certain species start to do something, they find that almost all the species around the world start to do the same thing.
No, was it like monkeys on an island or something? And then
I guess they would drop sweet potatoes off of them. They're observing them. I think it was somewhere in Japan. And then they taught one of the monkeys to wash the sand off of it. And so she figured it out. I can't remember the exact story, but so she started washing it, and then she taught other monkeys to wash the sand off. And then they noticed on other islands where the monkeys had never even seen these other monkeys doing this, started washing their sweet potatoes as well. It's based on a concept called morphogenic fields, which is Rupert Sheldrake. He's got some really interesting stories about animals and how they will like know things before they know things, and how they will pick up different things that the species are doing, and maybe it's evolvement or whatever it is, but interesting. So our orcas, who've always been considered quite friendly, they don't tend to eat people.
But I've never thought of them as friendly. I mean, after watching the Trials of Life in primary school and watching how they play with the seals before they kill them and eat them, I was like, I don't like you. But they have been friendly to humans, right?
My swim team was the orcas. We are the killer whales. And our whole thing was, well, orcas aren't evil. They're really nice to people. Apparently, they're like more intelligent than dolphins. And if a baby killer whale is somehow like raised with dolphins, they'll learn how to speak dolphin.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they will speak dolphin and pick up the tonality. And they've even taught them to say certain words. They'll imitate people's words as well.
I don't know. Just never trust an orca. We went on a dolphin watch.
Yeah.
And the driver of the boat said it was like the biggest pod he'd ever seen. It was like, I don't know, 1,000 dolphins. It was just ridiculous. Like as far as you could see, that I could see, the water was just stirring up and there was dolphins. And what had happened is they were all running away from orca that were hunting them. So we followed the orca, chasing them as they were hunting dolphins who were meant to be their friends. But they're like, we're going to eat you. And there's plenty of other stuff to eat. We've got abundant oceans here. They're like, no, we're going to hunt some dolphins. So never trust an orca. Don't eat me, Caroline.
Well, I don't trust dolphins either. Because dolphins are rapists.
Yeah, that's right. I think we've covered dolphin rape on here before.
I used to love dolphins. Apparently, they love pregnant women, and they'll even help women give birth, but they'll also rape women. Like, there's many documented cases of women and men being raped by dolphins.
So, how many people do you think have listened to all of our episodes and they're thinking right now, how do you manage it? How do you manage to steer the conversation back to dolphin rape? You guys just find a way.
Okay, to be fair, I think we've only talked about dolphin rape one other time, but I could be wrong. If you have listened to all our episodes and tell us how many times we've talked about dolphin rape, that would be very helpful and interesting. And obviously, I have a problem because I am like, they are predators, they are sex offenders. So they will rape other species as well. And like I think they've even done it to baby orcas where they will rape a baby orca to death. But you think about it, they can't wank. Most they can't. They can't. I was thinking about that the other day. I don't know how. I was listening to something and they were talking about, it was Joe Rogan. I was listening to Joe Rogan. He was talking about how, was it elk? Well, like they get really horny and they'll flop their dicks around and they'll pee all over themselves and they're whacking their dicks on the ground. And I was like, oh my God, they can't masturbate. And then I was like, how many animals actually can? Like monkeys.
So sorry. Let me just get this straight because this is recording and people might hear this one day.
Yeah.
You were spending actual time this week thinking about the problem of animals being unable to wank.
Yes. Yes. Like I know dogs can. I used to have this dog named Roy, who was this Yorkshire Terrier who looked like
anyway. Oh, look. What about that? What about that news story though?
Oh yeah. Okay, sorry. I digress. But dogs are nasty masturbators, a lot of them.
Oh,
but
dear.
Yeah, dolphins, orcas, they can't wank. Okay, I'm going to get back to the story. So you can see why they might rape things. I get it. Not that it justifies it, but are you okay? You look like you're having a seizure.
I think you've just killed me.
Okay.
Sorry. That's all right. Okay. I've got a cup of tea.
Yes. That's how I spend my spare time, people. It's thinking about what animals can wank and what animals can't. And the ones that can't, how much sexual offense do they cause? These are important topics to contemplate. Okay. Back to UFOs. One of my favorite topics besides animal masturbation. So this guy Grouch is not new to unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs, having served in roles that he actually investigates them for the government. So he worked for the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and the National Reconnaissance Office, who's responsible for maintaining global vigilance in times of peace and war. So it develops, acquires, launches, and operates innovative space-based surveillance and reconnaissance systems that collect and deliver intelligence to enhance U.S. national security.
That is a long job title.
That's a very fucking long job. And they basically are space-based surveillance. His allegations, grounded in years of personal experience and high-level intelligence, suggest the government has been secretly retrieving spacecraft of non-human origins for decades. Even more startling is his claims that their operations have been kept under wrap from Congress, violating legal requirements for disclosure. Now, this is not startling to me. He goes into the fact that they've unearthed artifacts. He says these objects vary from fragments to complete vehicles, and analysis identifies them as having exotic origin, suggesting non-human intelligence at work. So it's important to note that Grouch's statements have been officially validated for public disclosure, putting a serious spin on might otherwise be dismissed as a conspiracy theory. We've been hearing these stories forever. I even heard them from my own father because my grandfather was stationed around Area 51 and was doing a lot of testing on atomic bombs in the 40s.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting. It's now being validated. They're admitting it. He reveals that there's been this covert Cold War.
What if they're like validating lies, though? Like, what if it's all a distraction?
Well, don't jump ahead, Daryl. I was going to get to that in a second. If you've ever watched any big blockbuster movie, this is like the basis.
Independence Day.
I mean, there's a million of them that like, oh, by the way, aliens are real, Men in Black, you name it. So on one hand, we have all these movies about it, which people love. And on the other hand, we've had the government going, oh, that's just all bullshit and don't believe it. And you're just a crazy conspiracy theorist. Grouch reveals a covert Cold War fought for the collection of crashed or landed UAPs to gain a defensive edge. However, his whistleblowing hasn't been met with open arms, prompting retaliation and harassment from authorities. And he's saying he's getting like terrible, illegal harassment. He hasn't really said exactly what, but it's not good. So he stepped away from his government post this year and focused on his efforts increasing government accountability by shining light on these revelations. Joining Grouch in this expose that was in this article on the debrief, which I'll put the link in so you can read it yourself, is another intelligence expert, Jonathan Gray. So Gray serves as an intelligence officer, especially in UAP analysis at the National Air and Space Intelligence Center, the NASIC. That was very slow. NASIC. NASIC, yes. Which, I mean, so far, just in this one thing, I've named 3 intelligence agencies that are specializing with UAP analysis and detecting them. So they're not real, but we have all these government agencies investigating them. This other guy's come forward as well, and he is making public statements that are corroborating Grouch's claims, revealing that programs have been actively retrieving and studying these exotic materials, some of which are not of earthly origins.
Ugh, okay.
The former Deputy Assistant of Secretary of Defense for Intelligence has come forward and also corroborated their stories and backing them up. Even his lawyer used to be involved in certain programs and saying this is all true. I think that they are warming us up because they're not going to just one day do a press conference. They did with the UFOs or UAPs recently with the weather balloons, but I think they're just little by little by little.
Getting us just to the idea before they can reveal them and that they're a threat and that we definitely need a one world government to protect us.
Boom. And if you want to learn more about that, go and listen to our episode called The Blue Beam Project. What I find really interesting is this story came out on the 5th, and everyone's like, oh my God, they've actually come out with this. And so a lot of people have talked about it. And then like literally the next night or that night, it's hard to tell with like the time zones, Ukraine's one of their major hydroelectric power plant dams burst. Bursts. It burst. This was in Russian-controlled territory, built by the Russians, with the occupied by Russians downstream of this dam and feeding the water to Crimea. So, of course, the Ukrainians have come out and said that Russia did
it. Russia did it. They blew up their own dam. They blew up their own pipeline. Russia did it.
And I'm not saying Russia. I'm not a Putin sympathizer. I just think what makes logical sense? Would Russia blow up their own dam? I was looking at some satellite photos of this, and it was showing there was damage to it on the 2nd. And it had gotten very, very full.
Did you hear about that brave Dutch boy
that stuck his finger in the dike?
Yeah, I've told this one before. Just when you hear the dam with damage and the water coming out.
Yeah.
You know, he stick his finger in the hole in the dam until the pressure built.
So there definitely was damage preceding that. They could show damage to the top of it on the 2nd. And then on the 6th, in the early hours of the 6th, of June 6th, something hit it. Like military.
Like a bomb or missile.
Yeah, like missiles. But it provides drinking water for millions of people and irrigated agriculture areas that contribute to 10% of the world's wheat supply. So grain prices have shot up after the news broke, and they're just blaming each other. The European Union, of course, is siding with Ukraine and saying it's another Russian atrocity. But I just find it so interesting that there's this UAP or UFO story going, yes, they're real, and the government's hiding it from us. And then at the same exact time,
Look over there.
Because if this is Ukraine that did it, or with the help of the US, I'm just speculating, but I don't think Ukraine is really doing anything without the help of the US or influence of the US at the moment. And if they are not, like if they're doing it of their own accord, I mean, that again is an act of war. You are
I mean, they're
not,
at war though, so
but it's a terrorist attack. Like there are rules of war, and you can't damage millions of people's drinking water.
that's true. They won't be the first one to break the rules. I think Britain's sending some radioactive weapons to Ukraine to be used, depleted uranium or depleted plutonium or something like that. So either way, it's not a normal move taken during war. And it would just be, it's really weird for either side to do that. It just,
Putin is not a great guy, but it just doesn't make sense of why Russia would blow up their own dam that they paid for.
unless he just wants an excuse to retaliate harder against Ukraine. You go, look what you've done, blowing up their own infrastructure. It's something that definitely the US and other countries have never done to allow them to go deeper into a war.
That's a joke. Weapons of mass destruction, terrorist attacks. It just is disappointing and tragic. But, apparently we've given hundreds of billions of dollars. And then you look at how many people are in need in the US, and it's just tragic, and it just pisses me off. So it's not very funny, this story. Ha ha ha. What the fuck?
Great.
But it is. What really concerns me is now the WHO coming out and saying that they're going to pass this vaccine passports and that you're not going to be able to travel internationally without this passport and this digital ID. I do believe things need to be digitized, but also to demand that you have to be vaccinated. Like, what's next? What else are they going to demand? The COVID vaccine was a failure.
It's an interesting segue from the dam story, but yes, I
should probably.
But I agree with you.
Well, the original story I was going to tell, because I was working on this story before this news came out, is the Travis Walton UFO incident. There was a movie about this. I'm trying to remember when, maybe in the 90s. It could have been the 80s, called Fire in the Sky. Did you ever watch that movie?
No. Was it about a fire in the sky?
Well, not really. So it's November 5th, 1975, and a small logging crew is working late shift in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest near Snowflake, Arizona. It's a quiet night, just another day on the job. But that was all about to change. So as they're driving home, out of the corner of their eye, they see something. It's a light, a bright, glowing light that's much too large to be a star.
Can I just step in? Because 5th of November is bonfire night.
What's bonfire night?
So on the 5th of November every year, all over the UK, we light giant bonfires. It's also known as Guy Fawkes Night. It's celebrating.
It's like our 4th of July, who tried to blow up Parliament, right?
Yeah, so we make effigies of him, and we put him on top of a bonfire, of big bonfires, and then we burn the bonfire and burn the guy on top of it, still to this day, actually. And so probably they just saw a big bonfire on the hill in the distance in Arizona.
And the Guy Fawkes mask is the anonymous mask or the vendetta mask. That is supposed to be Guy Fawkes. So if you see that vendetta or anonymous wearing that mask, that is actually Guy Fawkes. No, it wasn't a bonfire, Daryl. And okay. I don't think they'd be doing a big bonfire in a forest. Because that's
well, you could be surprised. Some people are irresponsible
and stupid. Mm-hmm. Okay. Before they know it, they're face to face with an enormous hovering UFO buzzing with a high-pitched sound that sends shivers down their spine. And who decides to investigate? Travis Walton, a 22-year-old logger and apparent adrenaline junkie. So Travis is with 6 other workers and friends. Some of them were his best friends. So he jumps out to investigate, but before he can get a closer look, a bolt of blue light shot from the ship and knocked him down. And this freaked his friends out so bad, they screamed and took off, right? They're like, "Rah!" Then they felt really bad, so they come back and he's gone. They cannot find him anywhere. What do you do when your friend is knocked down and then disappears by a UFO shining a big light? You run to the police, right? You imagine you're a small town cop and a group of loggers come to you claiming their friend was abducted by aliens. What do? Well, in Snowflake, Arizona, they launched a massive manhunt. The town was in a frenzy. Had Travis been killed? Did the loggers invent a story to cover up a murder? Or had Travis really been taken by extraterrestrials? They were totally baffled. They used scent dogs and they couldn't pick up his trail. Basically, they could find it right at the spot he disappeared and then it was gone.
Ooh.
So it was just like he'd been plucked off the ground and dropped somewhere else.
Or put in a car and driven away.
Well, possibly. Hey,
But they would have seen tracks, right?
we don't need your skepticism right now. So the police were basically convinced that the guys had killed him and were covering it up by saying he was abducted by a UFO or someone had accidentally killed him. So they made them all take lie detector tests. And 5 of them passed completely. And 1, it was inconclusive because the guy was so distressed and upset. But they all passed. So 5 days later, he gets dropped off about 20 miles away. And he sees the lights of the town below. He runs down. He says he ran up to a building and banged on the doors. No one answered. And then, so he kept running along and he found a gas station and there were some payphones. So he calls his brother-in-law with a collect call and he's disoriented, scared. He's talking about these strange beings that had abducted him. And so his brother and his brother-in-law rush and they pick him up. They had to like literally pick him up and put him into the car. And he had thought that he was only gone for an hour. But he was severely dehydrated. And his brother is like looking at him and he's got 5 days growth of beard. And he's like, feel your face, Travis. So he feels his face and he's like, holy crap. So they take him to the hospital because he is severely dehydrated and has physical trauma. And he claims
In
what
the
happened.
anus?
They don't go into detail, but it looks like they did some testing.
What's the guess? There was some dolphins on board that UFO.
Maybe dolphins are actually aliens and they're trying to breed with humans to make like alien hybrid dolphin human babies.
It is not an anal probe. That's just a dolphin.
Oh, no.
So I shouldn't laugh at that.
He claims remembering seeing this flash of light, and then he wakes up in this hospital-like room, and he's being observed by 3 short, bald creatures. He remembers being led to another room by someone who looked very human, wearing a helmet, where he blacked out as 3 other human-like beings, put a clear plastic mask over his face. And he said he really tried to fight them off, but didn't have a chance. They were so strong. So some of them look like the typical gray aliens with the big heads and all that. And then there was others that looked very human and very like blonde, blue-eyed, very Nordic. Have you heard about like those supposed aliens where they're very Aryan, tall, look like supermodel Swedish people?
No, but I guess I would prefer to be abducted by those ones.
Yeah, same. Oh my God, I've been abducted by supermodels. Okay. So the story explodes. It's on every news channel and every paper. That little town of Snowflake, Arizona became the center of this international media circus.
So that made an international media circus.
Yes.
But actual revelations of contact with UFOs, nobody picks that story up. What?
They all pass polygraph examinations. He passed the polygraph as well. And what they also found was at the site, there was anomalies in the soil samples and tree rings. There was high radiation. There was things that weren't right where they said it landed or they saw it. It won the National Enquirer's Best UFO Story. And he had disappeared for 5 days and 6 hours. And there was a lot of people who were like, oh, he just went in hiding and starved himself for 5 days. Wouldn't you starve yourself for like 2 days and then be like, hey, I don't know. Also, the other thing is that with all the friends, they were being investigated for murdering this guy. And if he didn't show up, I wonder what would have happened.
In the USA, don't you need like a murder weapon and a motive before you can be...
Yeah, they say you need a body and all of that. But I think they have done trials where there's just been enough circumstantial evidence. I'm trying to think of any at the moment. Can't really think of any, but they definitely, you don't have to have a smoking gun in your hand.
But it's not a nice place to be as the friends of this guy thinking, they think I murdered my friend.
Well, that's the thing as well, is like if suddenly you thought, oh, we'll play this big joke and we'll get all this media attention. And then you start getting investigated for murder. Wouldn't you be like, hey, like 6 guys, I don't think would stick to the story and go down that route. I think they would turn around and be like, actually, it's just a fucking joke. Go get the guy sooner.
If they knew that he wasn't murdered, then it gives them the ability to stick to the story because they know they're not going to jail because they know they didn't murder him. But also, I don't know if you overestimate or underestimate what loggers would do to entertain themselves in the forest.
And do you have any stories about that, Daryl? What kind of logs are we talking about? Someone lay their log on you in the forest?
When was this story?
75.
75. Okay. So it was before smartphones. I'm guessing this could be a good prank.
But would you starve, like, if you didn't drink any water for 5 days, you're like on death's door, right? You lasting maybe another day or two, and then you're dead and doing severe damage to your body.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an option. I mean, I guess if they all said that, either they're all crazy, or it's real, or one person wormed it into their head through repeated suggestions.
Possibly.
Did they all take mushrooms before it happened? That's my question. I just have so many questions.
But if they all were on mushrooms, would they all have the same exact story?
That's the thing. That's why day number 1 of working in the bank, rule number 1, if we're robbed, afterwards, separate everyone. Do not let them talk. Because as soon as one person goes, oh, I saw him jump into a blue truck, everyone will remember that even if it didn't happen. So we can implant memories. So it's possible under stress, under the influence of drugs, that yes, they could all remember the same thing that didn't happen or a mass hallucination. But is it also possible that the guy was abducted by aliens? Yeah, I concede that it is also possible.
Have you ever done any sessions where people have gone into an alien abduction?
No.
Because I have.
Oh, yes.
And I've talked about one on the podcast, but I've had more than that. And I've probably had 3 people. And that's over, I mean, God knows how many. I've probably seen at least 10,000 clients over the years. The 3 people that I've had did not want to tell me this, but they regressed to it. They were terrified I wouldn't believe them. And none of them had gone to the media. 2 of them had medical evidence. One in particular was pregnant and then wasn't pregnant afterwards and thought it was a dream. That's the one I tell on the podcast. And these people, they believe it is true. I can tell you that. They absolutely believe this happened to them. Am I saying it 100% did? But I believe them. And I've worked with people with delusion disorder where they will believe something that is so true. And you cannot convince them otherwise that it isn't. But this was different. Like with that, you're like, nah, that's not true. I don't know why. Because the people with delusion disorder actually had things that were more possible than these people with like the alien abduction stories. But they were incredibly traumatized by it. They all had like physical wounds from it, surgical on their belly buttons, or looked like they'd had some type of laparoscopic. And they just weren't people that go around telling people. So why would you just save it up and then tell one hypnotherapist randomly years later when you came for something else and you didn't even want to talk about it?
Well, I do have an answer for that, of course.
What is it?
Well, I watched this movie once. I don't remember what it was, and I didn't quite enjoy it. But anyway, it was this guy, and he was being sexually abused. And as an adult, he thought he was abducted by an alien. But through therapy or through time, he uncovered that those alien abduction stories his brain had created to cover up the abuse, so he didn't know what actually happened. So he couldn't remember it. It was a way of repressing his memories.
They worked with a hypnotherapist that recovered those memories?
I don't remember that level of detail. I remember it was Joseph Gordon-Levitt or something, the guy from Third Rock from the Sun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the actor, so you could probably find it, the movie.
Oh, I'll have to check that out. You and I know very well that it is not hard to implant false memories or to get people to remember things that weren't necessarily true. And we'll do that as a trauma response. But I think on the other hand, what I find interesting is because I'll read a lot of books on hypnosis and you read the transcripts. And a lot of times, like, these hypnotherapists are leading them away from the
Mhm.
story that they're telling, or trying to make it more believable or sensible. And so we'll be like, "Oh no, you weren't abducted. It was just you were molested."
On the other hand, I've read books. There's one by Lawrence Follis, Hypnosis in the Higher Self, where he
Yep,
completely
I know it.
leads the clients. You know that one?
I know.
He just
I
leads them
know.
into it. Like, and so were you abducted? And when were you? And did they anal probe you? And he just asks leading questions the whole way. So I can see that it's possible. I think if somebody sat in front of me and I believed them and I trusted them and we had rapport and they started opening up about something like that, I don't think my brain would be going, you're crazy. You know, I think I would be listening to them
Mm.
and accepting what they're telling me. And so I can understand why you did that.
And what I find interesting is all 3 people were living in a very similar area of Australia around the same time.
Really? And then you met them in New Zealand?
Yes.
Oh, that's
So that
Providence.
I also find very interesting.
Were they near Byron Bay? I was just guessing.
No, it wasn't Byron Bay. That would make sense. I'm not gonna say where it is, but that I found very interesting. So by the 3rd time, I was like, this is really weird." I don't know. It's interesting, but the guy, Travis Walton, stuck to his story his whole life. He didn't believe that the aliens were trying to hurt him in any way. Yeah, and that they were actually trying to help him because he had been injured by this beam, was the feeling that he got. And
Mm.
that they don't pose a threat to humanity, that they could have, like, destroyed us all very easily if they wanted to. But what's interesting is there is a doctor from, I think, Stanford, who, I don't know if his name has come out. I remember hearing somebody talk about this case where he basically was contacted by the military. He was some type of, like, neurologist or something, wanting him to examine and go through the medical records, and even, I think, even work with some of these people that were all people in the military who had been injured by UFOs.
Mm.
And there was over 100 lawsuits against the military for people who had been injured and then not properly compensated. Like that the UFO would emit some energy that would cause head trauma, or they'd fall back, but mostly just like having something try to land by them and they get like traumatic brain injuries and have terrible concussion syndromes and spinal injuries and all kinds of stuff. But he had over 100 cases. And these people wanted to do a class action suit, or were doing some type of class action suit against the military, because the military was like, "Oh, too bad. Here's some really shitty VA benefits."
Hmm. Well, I guess we're going to find out soon, because if they're revealing the presence of aliens, etc., and such things, then it could be like feed you a bit at a time, give you more information, leak it, leak it,
Mm.
leak it, so that there's no panic. So we have time still to fall in love with national sovereignty and enjoy our own countries and not have to have a one world government under the power of unelected bureaucrats and the multi-billionaires of the world. But
That'll be 2024.
coming to a town near you soon.
The other theory I think could be plausible is, are they really from outer space, or are they from the future
Or the past.
or another dimension?
Mm.
If you look into quantum computing, you really want to blow your mind, where they talk about how they've contacted other parallel worlds that are like right here and gotten resources from these parallel worlds and brought them back here. They won't say what they are, but look into quantum
Mm.
computing. And once that starts, because computers are zeros and ones, right? That binary 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, everything is zero ones, but quantum computings can hold all of them all at the same time. Am I boring you? Am I boring you, David, with my talk of quantum computing?
No, sorry, I just got called really early from Scotland.
Mm.
I was like, "Mum, do you remember that there's a time zone difference?" And she's like, "Oh no, but I was just driving over the Edinburgh Bridge and it's so beautiful. I wanted to video call you so you could see it, but my phone won't work because there's no reception on the train."
And what time was this? Like 9?
An hour before I would normally get up.
What time, Daryl?
7:30.
Oh, okay. Oh, you poor thing. 7:30 in the morning. I was thinking maybe like 8 or 9 for you. That is terrible. Sorry.
I know, well, because I had a late night, so.
Well, I know you need to go and bring your hedgehog to be rescued.
You're going to take it to a lady who's going to give it some ivermectin and look after it while I go overseas?
Daryl is a avid hedgehog rescuer.
By accident.
Uh-huh. I remember when you were spending like hours a day oiling and massaging and feeding your hedgehog.
Zzz.
Zah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. You had multiple.
I had multiple.
Jesus.
Because I was fostering them, I was able to foster hedgehogs and look after them when they were sick. And if they've got mange, you have to pour hot oil over them. Not like really hot, like just warm to clean the mange. And it takes a bit of care to nurse them back to health. But my dog found one. So write into us with your crazy news requests if you've got any conspiracy theories you want us to cover.
Or your own UFO stories. Or if you know anyone or have, you can do it all anonymously, who worked at like Area 51. So Area 51, right, which is in Nevada, they do 16 flights a day to Area 51.
I'm still not impressed by that.
Well, I am. I don't know why I am. You need top secret clearance. You cannot buy a ticket. It's all very interesting.
No, I'm just thinking, it's like their staff in and out.
To Area 51, Daryl.
Yeah, because they must be doing something there.
Yeah, they're probably reverse engineering these UFOs.
Or it's a military base.
Maybe half the UFOs are just American. I don't know.
My bet goes on American or Russian or Chinese.
Mm,
But who knows? Who knows?
maybe the future. They're coming to warn us.
You're probably right. Okay, write to us, wtfstoriesandadvice@gmail.com.
And give us a review. Share this with your friends.
Buy our products.
Yeah. Okay, this is just fucking terrible and I'm rambling. All right, on that note, bye.
Goodbye.
God.
Oh dear.
There goes a sight from my soul.